have reached a new low.
Antarctic sea ice area has already blown through last year's record minimum, and it's not finished yet. If you're new around here, hello, I'm Ella Gilbert. I'm a polar climate scientist with a PhD in Antarctic climate change. And in this video, I'm going to be taking you through some of the reasons for that new low in sea ice area and what it might mean. Also, don't watch this whole red eye thing, because I had some surgery a couple of weeks ago and I still look like I've been punched in the face, so what are you going to do? Okay, so let me put this into context. In February 2023, the area covered by floating sea ice around the Antarctic continent fell to 1.91 million square kilometres, pushing the previous record holder, 2022, off the top spot, or bottom spot, after just a one-year reign. And this year's value is almost certainly going to drop further because Antarctic sea ice extent usually bottoms out somewhere between about mid-February and early March. Every winter, the growth of Antarctic sea ice pretty much doubles the size of the entire continent, and every summer it shrinks back to its minimum, albeit a minimum that takes up almost the same amount of space as the whole of Mexico, but it's all relative, I guess. Tracking the minimum and maximum area it reaches every year can tell us something about the climate, you'd think. But the thing is, Antarctic sea ice is a mess. Antarctic sea ice extent has been all over the place in recent years, in some years climbing to extreme highs, in others reaching near record lows. And for a long time, Antarctic sea ice extent was actually even slightly increasing, which was pretty confusing for many of my colleagues in polar climate science because, well, the rest of the world is heating up, so why the hell should Antarctic sea ice be doing, well, the polar opposite of what we would expect? But if we look at what's actually happened to sea ice since we first launched satellites into space in 1979, there's actually been basically no change in Antarctic sea ice extent. But successive years of record minima since 2016 have fueled plenty of research and plenty of speculation about whether Antarctic sea ice is about to mirror its Arctic counterpart and drop off a cliff. And this year adds another data point to the trend that may be emerging. But what's behind this record low? Unfortunately, with Antarctic sea ice, it's never simple, but there are a few things that we can point our fingers at. First of all, temperatures around the Antarctic Peninsula have been unusually warm this year, running at around about 1.5 degrees Celsius hotter than usual. There have also been stronger than usual westerly winds circling the continent, which are associated with a positive southern annular mode. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out this video up here. Those winds drive storms that can break up any ice that's floating on the sea surface. Oh, what's that? What does it mean? Oh, great question. So glad you asked. Well, apart from being an indicator that Antarctic sea ice has finally got the memo about that whole global warming thing, it may also have some short-term impacts. In front of glaciers and floating ice shelves, you get this mixture called ice mélange. Mélange, 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 mélange. Which sounds like a great cocktail, but it's actually just loads of sea ice mixed up with little tiny chunks of icebergs and little crumbs of glaciers, basically, which, actually, this is a great tangent, they're called bergy bits. Bergy bits. That mélange acts like a sort of glue, holding glaciers back and making them lose less ice and consequently contributing less to sea level rise. There's also a bit of a buffer, so having less Antarctic sea ice along the coasts exposes the continent's ice to more smashy action from the ocean and actually in some places also to more warming. You might be wondering if this is a sign of things to come, and the answer is probably maybe. Or maybe probably. For years, the global climate models that we use to predict future climate change have been getting Antarctic sea ice pretty wrong. They predicted a decline in recent decades. Obviously, that hasn't played out in the real world, which tells us there's something missing in the models or perhaps even our understanding. But we do think that's where the story will go eventually, with Antarctic sea ice declining as temperatures in the atmosphere and in the oceans continue to rise in pace with ongoing emissions. It's still too early to tell whether the last 6 years are just a blip in the record or the beginning of a more meaningful trend, but it is almost certain that we will see a decline in the amount of sea ice in the southern hemisphere over the coming decades. That's it for today, but if you can't get enough of the polar science, check out these videos up here and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. See you next time!